Hello, friends. Welcome in. It's 12:04. May I be the first to say good afternoon. My name is Matt Murphy, and this, conveniently, is the Matt Murphy Radio Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I am pleased you've decided to join us, whatever amount of time you're able to give us, 2, 3, 4 minutes, or the full 3 hours. I thank you for it. It's our episode 557 of these proceedings. It is Monday, April 22, 2024. Is it Earth Day? Did I see that this morning correctly?
Yeah, it definitely is, because all you have to do is look at Twitter and people are
doing the green thing and all of that.
Global warming, climate change. Shut up.
I think of every day as Earth Day. I get up every morning and I embrace Mother Earth. I allow her to hold me in her bosom and caress me gently and explain to me if the crap goes down, she's killing all the humans first.
That entire comment was just a way for you to use the word bosom.
That's true. I like the bosoms. Anyway, we've got lots to get into today, and I hope that you're spending some time with us. You're welcome to participate in the proceedings. There's a number of ways of doing that. Allow me to first tell you how you can listen to the show. Now, if you're on radio, obviously you're listening to 99.7 FM, and I thank you for that all across Middle Tennessee, from Kentucky to Alabama and all points in between. You can also find us on your streaming app. That gives you the ability on your smartphone, laptop, whatever, to take us wherever you might go. And you can just download us. I mean, any streaming application you use to stream music or information or sports programming or whatever it might be, just type in Super Talk 99.7 WTN in the search bar. We should be there. If we're not, download our app. We have an app where you can take us wherever you go. That is Super Talk 99.7 WTN in your app store. And then, of course, there is Super Talk Television, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. It's always up and running as we are. You get a nice slice of, I don't know, masochists in the listening audience maybe want to watch the proceedings because, look at this. This is a face made for radio. One way or the other. Bell K is asked on a daily basis if he will participate in the television side of things. He refuses, which is why we refer to him as Headless Bell. But he does give us a title every day. And episode 5, and I learned the title, by the way. Somebody asked me this weekend, Bell. Do you guys talk about the titles? But I was like, no, I find out about the titles the moment that the audience finds out about the titles. And today's episode, 557, is entitled
Matt Murphy. Matt Murphy helping Phil Williams do his job because he's good like that.
What are you doing to me?
I'm not doing anything.
Phil's very upset at me for some reason, but it's odd that an investigative reporter is upset at someone else for asking questions. And I had several people ask me what was going on over the weekend, and that's the way that I responded. That an esteemed journalist at a reputable news channel, local news station in Nashville, Tennessee, the most well-known investigative reporter in Nashville, is upset because some dunderhead on the radio is asking questions that he doesn't like. And that, frankly, he does not have any answers for. So I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time on it, and I was not going to lead the show on it, but I will just say this. For those of you who do not understand what's going on, I have for months been asking Phil Williams, who purports to be an unbiased journalist, who goes where the stories lead him. I've asked him if he has investigated the allegations against Representative Justin Jones from the summer of 2020. I have been referring to them as credible allegations. Phil Williams took exception with that description on Dan Mandis' show Friday, when he made an appearance there. And kudos for Dan for getting him and interviewing him, and I thought it was a great interview. Phil doesn't like the idea of calling them credible allegations because he suggests that Janisha Harris was not on site at the time that these reported sexual assaults occurred, that Phil Williams then allegedly covered, Justin Jones then allegedly covered up. Or begged the participants not to report. He doesn't like calling it credible. Well, I'm sorry, Phil. I thought we were to believe these accusations and investigate these accusations where they led us because the women involved in the accusations are to be believed. Is that not the standard? Let's put it a different way. Phil says because he claims that Janisha was not there. She's not clear in her Facebook post whether she was on site or not, but she does not claim to have eyewitness account of it, but she has the testimony of eyewitness accounts that there was someone sexually assaulted in the summer of 2020, and as an activist, Justin Jones covered up the sexual assaults because he believed that it would take away from the activism in an attempt to get the Nathan Bedford Forrest bust out of the state capitol in the summer of 2020. I don't know what happened at the state capitol in the summer of 2020. I was not here. I know that someone has made an accusation, and I think that accusation should be fleshed out, particularly considering that now that accusation is being made against a sitting representative in the House of Representatives in the Tennessee General Assembly. Let's put it this way. If I went to Phil Williams of News Channel 5, esteemed investigative reporter, serious question, ask yourself this. If I went to him and I told him that I had been told by two eyewitnesses that Governor Bill Lee had covered up a sexual assault, or any Republican, do you think Phil Williams would be more interested in this story, yes or no? Just use the brain that God gave you, and I think you'll come to the answer pretty quickly. And so while I do not know, and I've never claimed that any of this happened, what I have said repeatedly is that there are assertions and allegations against Justin Jones that I believe merit further investigation. And now so in 36 hours, he has changed his story from Matt Murphy is lying about all of this on the radio to, as he answered Dan Mandis Friday morning, I've looked into this and there's nothing there, to now over the weekend he's pointing the finger at me. Well, why haven't you investigated it? Hey, pal, I'm not the one with investigative reporter behind my name. You are. And you seem to be of the mistaken conclusion that this story and my bringing it up is about Justin Jones. It's not. It's about you, Phil. It's about your credibility. It's about your assertion that you play fair. And I know that you don't. And you know it too, Phil. You know it too. Do the Tennessee State Capitol Police have archived video footage of the events of the summer of 2020? Where is Janisha Harris, and is she willing to go on the record with you? Have you spoken to Vanderbilt Divinity School and asked them what their conclusions were with regard to their investigation, or at least their questioning of the incident? And did that have anything to do with their putting Justin Jones on a permanent leave of absence in his study in their divinity school? These are not very difficult questions. Once again, if you don't think this story is worth your time, just say that. That's okay. It's no big deal. If you don't believe someone accusing a now sitting representative of covering up a sexual assault is worth the time and energy to investigate it, then by all means, I'm not here to tell you how to do your job. But don't you sit there and pee on my leg and tell me it's raining and claim that if this were a Republican that you would be treating this the same way. You know it's not so, and so do we. So let's be a partisan. That's fine. That's all well and good. You do your job the way that you want to do your job, Phil. But let's not lie to the people. It's unseemly. It's really beneath you. It's something a lowly talk radio show host would do, right, Phil? And that's all I'll say about that. Now, as we get the show underway, I know that there's a lot of conversation going on about the votes that happened over the weekend. Republicans joined the Democrats in voting for $95 billion of monies that will go to Ukraine without any accountability. Israel, in which we are funding all sides of that conflict, sadly, Any monies given to Gaza for Gaza humanitarian relief will be funneled to Hamas first, and Hamas will seize whatever money or whatever humanitarian aid that you give them, and they will utilize that for their own purposes long before they hand out anything to the Palestinian people. We know that. We're also in the midst of, or have been in the midst of, releasing Iranian money. And that gives the Iranians a better ability to fund Hezbollah, Hamas, and their own interests in furthering the ramping up of conflict in the Middle East. And then the Taiwanese money, that came with the caveat that Joe Biden could redirect that money at any time that he wants to Ukraine. So I look at that as Ukrainian money because I think that's exactly what he'll do with it. You have this going on. We don't have this money. This is made up money. This is phony money. Fake money is what I call it because that's what it is. We are almost $35 trillion in debt. That amount of money is going up like a hockey stick graph. We are financially insolvent in the United States of America. We are not currently taking care of American needs here at home. We obviously have a southern border crisis that is woefully underfunded, or at very least undermanaged, under the tutelage of the Biden administration and Alejandro Mayorkas. You have the Biden administration working against our energy needs actively, shutting down the possibilities of exploring further energy opportunities here in the United States of America because of environmentalist concerns and because of votes. You know, the Biden administration's suspiciously quiet as many of our major metropolitan regions, our major cities, are under unrest at least and in chaos at worst because we are allowing so many pro-Palestinian and pro-terrorist, in my opinion, activities going on, particularly on college campuses. And all the while, those of us in the state of Tennessee and in other parts of the country sit back and wonder, what in the hell has happened? As I said to Chris Hand during our crossover before coming on air, it is my predisposition to get mad as hell about these things and to rant and to rave. Oh, I didn't mention the lawfare that's going on, the Banana Republic type of activity that's going on in New York City, which is a major piece of this puzzle that you need in order to be able to see the complete mosaic. You have mainstream media. Talk about Phil Williams. Jump on in here, Phil. You got mainstream media picking and choosing the winners and the losers, the narratives that they are willing to tell versus the narratives that they are not willing to tell for their own political purposes because they're all leftists. And either know exactly what they're doing or are useful idiots to the cause. Donald Trump under fire in New York City today. And we're shaking our heads and wondering if we can have fair elections anymore in this country. All of this is going on in my head. And I was contemplating how to start the show today. Because I'm very concerned, as I know you are, with the future and direction of the United States of America. I found solace in this. I don't normally read to you or recite things to you, but I found solace in this. I found solace in this thought, and I found solace in these words, and I wanted to share them with you. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light or transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Thomas Jefferson, the original insurrectionist. Back in a moment. You know, USS calls this waterproofing season. The reason is because of the nature of the rains that we get this time of year, right? You get these massive downpours, and that can identify issues with waterproofing that you might have in your basement or your crawl space. Are you aware? Do you smell a smell? Have you noticed issues surrounding some of the symptoms of waterproofing needs or foundation needs? Well, USS is your go-to company. I mean, they can send out a representative to your home. You will get a problem solver that provides peace of mind to their customers, the homeowner. You're not getting somebody that's worried about a sales quota. They sure will not try to upsell you on anything you don't need. All they want to do is identify the issues that perhaps you've already seen, and with a professional way about them, figure out how to best solve those as inexpensively as possible permanently. That's what they do at USS. Foundation repair, waterproofing, concrete leveling, it's all at USSTN.com. That's USSTN.com. Homeowners have trusted USS since 1994. That's a long time of doing this work, and over 25,000 people have given the thumbs up to USS. They guarantee their best. USSTN.com, or call them today at 615-488-7855. 488-7855 for USS. Libertarian Lunch ongoing. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Would love to hear from you at any point during the proceedings. If you want to give us a call, you're welcome. Phone lines are always open and available to you on the Murphy Show, 615-737-9986, 615-737-9986. Those are also the Members Nutrition Super Text line numbers. You dial us up that way, and you can get in on the Members Nutrition Super Text line, and we would invite you to do that as well. Jeff says, hear me out. The winner of the election is president. The loser serves as VP. If a vote can't be agreed on, bills must go through the people to vote on in a special called election, or the state governors to vote on it. All right, Jeff, I've heard you out.
Isn't that process sort of already in place?
Well, we originally had, in the original process, we had the second place guy
Was the VP.
And we changed that.
But if there's no clear winner of electoral votes, then the House decides who's the president.
Well, no, I think what Jeff was saying is that if a vote, any vote, can't be agreed on, the bill goes to the people to vote on, which would be more of a direct form of democracy. And let me tell you something, Jeff. You have a lot more faith in the dunderheads that are walking around this country than I do. There are a lot of snapperheads.
Without a doubt.
I mean, and I don't know that I want all of them participating on that level in government. I mean, it's bad enough that they decide to pop their heads out of their snapperhead holes every 4 years and vote.
You would have politicians throwing up free money bills left and right. So I guess it would sort of be like now.
I mean, the definition of democracy are the wolves voting the sheep for dinner, right? As the saying always goes. So I don't know. I'll have to consider it, Jeff. I'll take it under advisement. How about that? Mike says it is noteworthy upon my recitation of the beginning of the Declaration of Independence. Mike says it is noteworthy that Jefferson stated that it was a duty. That's right. A duty among men. You know,
Jefferson said duty.
He did. Also, I'm getting, Matt Murphy calling for a revolution. I'm not calling for a revolution. I'm reading about one. I was reading the basic declaration of one. That's all. That's all. I don't know. I don't know how we get resolution. There are a lot of people in the United States of America that believe that the government has grown far beyond its usefulness. Sadly, even the conservatives that walk into that dynamic in Washington, D.C., do not find a way. Oh, they tell us they want to, but they can't find a way to shrink the problem. It is not enough to blanch the growth anymore. We have to shrink it. The federal government is easy and free money, and it is not solvent. And this is not something that's going to happen 100 years from now. Our rights do not come from the government of the United States of America, nor do they stop there. And it is, in my opinion, a high time that we organized and asked ourselves whether those political parties or political bands that unite us are serving our best interest. Or perhaps our interest would be better served in some other fashion. We have become far too dependent. It's so easy because anytime you talk about shrinking government, someone comes out of the woodwork and the mainstream media just parrots what they're saying and amplifies it to the nth degree about how you're going to kill people if you lessen the impact of the federal government, you know, just ignoring the fact that the people will take this up for themselves, ignoring the idea that from a community standpoint, they still exist good organizations that are available to people to help others in the United States of America, community groups, church-based organizations, charitable-based foundations, circles of friend groups. And when the government swoops in and takes those organizations over, those organizations cease to exist. But they were there to begin with to take that role that is not the government's. And that is to help the least of these in the United States of America. But they use that to grow government. But there's a tremendous payback. And that is a loss of freedom. 1232 Super Talk 99.7 WTN would love to hear what you think about this. 615-737-9986. By the way, as a way of signposting, we've got Congressman Scott DeJarlais making a return appearance on the Matt Murphy Show. He voted against this boondoggle of a piece of legislation over the weekend. He'll be here at 1 o'clock. Jack Johnson will be here to talk about the failure of the Education Scholarship Fund at 2 o'clock, amongst other things. Those guests on the docket for the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk. Over the weekend, Saturday evening, I swung by the Glock store on Airlane Drive just off of Elm Hill Pike to say hello to my Davidson County Republican friends. And if you were out and about over the weekend and you saw me, thank you for saying hello. It was great to meet all of you. It was great to be back in the Glock store. I have not been training enough, and that I told Dan this over the weekend. Dan over at the Glock store. I've not been training enough, and I've got to get back into the shooting rooms. They don't believe in lanes. You know, let me just put it delicately for you. Lanes suck. Here's why. Because you don't live your life that way. You don't live your life in a manner in which if you ever, God forbid, you ever have to pull your gun and use it for personal self-defense or to defend others, you don't live in a lane. So why are you training in one? They have rooms, and they set up those rooms in different ways to make it as realistic as possible for you at the Glock store. You can find out more at shoot270.com about their incredible training rooms. That's shoot270.com. And then go see the retail space. Man, oh man, it's big, it's bright. They're friendly folks there. They're ready to help you with shopping for firearms or magazines, parts, accessories. They've got it all at the Glock store, including the infamous, world-famous concealed carry underpants. It's the Glock store, glockstore.com or shoot270.com. Find out more and stop by and say hello to the gang today. 1237 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. 5054, yes, I know that concealed carry underwear has been around for a long time. They've just got some great brands over at the Glock store. So
I'm sorry, hearing a man talk about concealed carry underwear will never not be funny.
I love it. Absolutely love
it.
They got the T-shirts with one in there.
Until you started talking about that, I didn't know that stuff exists. But the visual I have in my head now, nobody is ever going to top that.
I've got the underpants for the extra large guns.
Are
you sliding out of this conversation now?
Bye.
By the way, did you tell me you've not done your corporate training yet?
No, we've got till the 26th. I got 4 days left. I'll do it day of.
What I completed, I don't know if I was doing something I wasn't supposed to do, but what I completed this morning, and I just sent our boss man Dandis, a note saying an hour of my life that I'm never going to get back. What I completed was like it took an hour and a half.
Good Lord.
It's a lot.
Never take that long.
I don't know if I'm still under the management umbrella, though, because I was in management in Birmingham.
Right.
That's what I'm wondering, is if I did not complete some management training, too. In addition to
would not surprise me if that turned out to be true.
In addition to my standard training. One way or the other, I feel better for it. I feel more attuned to the ways of the modern corporate world and the ways of modern society for it. And I'm on my P's and Q's, as they say, today, with regard to, I'm not going to harass anybody today.
Real paradigm shift in your thinking occurred.
Well, look, I got my mind right, as they said in Cool Hand Luke.
Love to hear it.
You got your mind right, Luke? I got my mind right, boss. I really do. If you've ever seen Cool Hand Luke and you understand, and I'm not knocking anybody, I'm not knocking anything, I'm not casting aspersions about anything, I'm just telling you the truth. That when I do that type of training, I feel like Paul Newman in Cool Hand Luke. You got your mind right, Luke? I got my mind right, boss. I wish you'd stop being so good to me, boss. Kathy writes in during our Libertarian lunchtime hour and has this to say. Please elaborate, she says. Matt, can you explain or elaborate on how you get comfort from reading the Declaration of Independence? Are you suggesting that we are at that point in the United States again? Because that thought does not comfort me. It terrifies me. I believe a modern-day revolt against the federal government would be an absolute disaster. You know, most colonists believe the same thing about a right. I'm not, by the way, Kathy, I'm not recommending anything. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just having a conversation with folks. But I can't not be honest with you about how I assess these things. The day that I feel like I have to hold back what I truly believe about all of this is the day that I'll go do something else. And there's plenty of other things that I could do, believe it or not, contrary to, what some think. But enough about Phil Williams. So I just have to call this as I see it. And we have some major issues that we have come to an impasse on in the United States, and I don't see the political leftists moving 1 inch. I'm not against offering concessions because they're Americans too, quote unquote. As they say. Not quote unquote, as they say. Everybody's an American here. We're all entitled to our own belief structure. But they're not moving on any of this. They're not moving on their position on open borders when clearly we see what the results of open border policy have been. They're not moving on putting the interest of the Ukrainians in front of the interest of the Americans. They're not moving on the amount of overspending they're willing to engage in to maintain and keep power. on any of it. And sadly, our champions throw up their hands and tell us there's nothing more that they can do. I don't think Mike Johnson's a bad person. I don't know Mike Johnson. People that do know Mike Johnson, they tell me they think he's a good person. We had Andy Ogles on last week. I said, Andy, is Mike Johnson a good person? He said, yeah, I think he's a good person. That's what he said. What's he doing? Giving up? That's what he's doing. We are watching the United States of America become a communist or a socialist country. This is how it happens. A consolidation of power in a centralized government and the seizure of power from individual localities and municipalities and states, in this case, in advance of a concerted, centralized interest. Washington, D.C. becomes England in this scenario. And they issue edicts that do not properly represent the interests of the various states or the people. And so what do? Well, it is our responsibility to send more individuals to that same government in order to correct those errors. And it works until such time as the system itself devises a method and a methodology by which it cannot be deconstructed. Why do you think Donald Trump became enemy number one when he began talking about deconstructing the deep state and draining the swamp? Why do you think people look at him as such a radical? I wonder if, and I'm not making the comparison, I just wonder if the same was said about Samuel Adams. I wonder if the same was said about Alexander Hamilton and James Madison and so many of the other founding fathers that took on an effort that, to your point, Kathy, seemed unwinnable. It was believed at the time, history indicates to me that it was believed at the time that the greatest army on God's earth would run roughshod over the colonists and put them back into their proper place. And it did not happen. Because the British Army was just that, a British Army, a conscripted service. The colonists, the true believers, they understood that they had a godly purpose on their side to ensure that individual men, and in that case it was just men, sadly, but it was, I'm not here to rewrite history, that men had the opportunity and the right to determine their own fate and the fate of their own household. I'm not saying that that's where we are, but I mean, what are we doing on this radio show if we're not willing to talk about that? What are we doing in this electronic public square, just as our forefathers gathered together in the public square and rang the bell and gathered those around? What do you think the Liberty Bell was all about? The Liberty Bell is called the Liberty Bell because it was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and they rang it, and they brought everybody to the public square, and they said, we have something to read to you that we think you might ought to hear. What are we? What are we? 5364 says Americans have become such cowards. I want to believe that that is not so. I want to believe that it's not so. Sally said all of the founding fathers were traitors. Well, I mean, yes, they were. I mean, so said the king. I mean, obviously, that history would have been written very differently had America not come out victorious. Had we not incredible leadership within our military system, obviously to include General George Washington and others. I don't know. I think more broadly about these things because it gives me a respite of hope. Kathy, I understand what you mean. I mean, there is no ability for me to conceive of that type of thing without recognizing that, yes, it would be an absolute disaster. You would have to have, if there was a determination along those lines, you would have to have enough massive numbers that there would be no bloodshed. Because if it came to that, then obviously the government of the United States of America has a military that would obviously and completely overwhelm any groups of people that had decided to dissolve the political bands that bound them. You would necessarily need overwhelming numbers. Now, I'm not suggesting any of that. Here's what I'm suggesting. Here's what I'm asking. Do we still believe in the Declaration of Independence? Because right now, I guarantee you right now, there are listeners to this radio show, not just Phil Williams, others that are liberals. You know, I've decided when I catch a liberal trying to not act like a liberal on the show from now on, Bell, I'm going to tell him not to be a Phil. Although, no, maybe I should tell him I don't want to confuse Phil Valentine. The great Phil Valentine.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do
maybe
that.
Don't be a PW. How about that? Don't be a PW. I mean, let's just be what we are. Let's not pretend that we're something that we're not. Anyway, do we still believe in the Declaration of Independence? The Declaration of Independence was a radical document, man. And it's radical to this day. And we learned about it in school, and we said, yay, hooray for us. We won. That's awesome. If you want to understand how history gets written differently when you're on the losing side of it, look at the reaction to the Civil War, which obviously had the cloak and the nastiness and the evil of slavery up upon it that made it easy to vilify. And there were a lot of reasons, too. I'm not getting into that. I'm saying the differences in approach, especially when we were kids in the 6th and 7th and 8th grade. I just wonder if we are near the idea of a third party, if we're near the idea of a political uprising. I mean, we kind of saw it in the aftermath of the Obama administration coming in and doing some of the things that they did. I was a part of the Tea Party movement as they were attempting to take more of our money for their own purposes and uses. I just question some of those things. It's 12:51. We continue to question. We question the power that is behind the throne. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy. I want to spend a moment talking about one of my favorite subjects. Those of you watching on Super Talk TV know one of my favorite subjects is food, and I love spicing it up with Savory Spice. Holly, David, they got the spring spice selection out and about, and they are getting ready for grilling season. I love this time of year at Savory Spice because they've got everything that you need to get on the grill and up that grilling game, whether it's steaks or chops, whether it's hot dogs and hamburgers, no matter what you plan on putting on the grill, you need to do so with Savory Spice in your cabinet, in your cupboard, or next to you on the back deck. I encourage you to go out to Savory Spice and see some of the accoutrements that they have available for grilling season and also some of the delicious, incredible spices. They can spice up steaks. They can spice up chops. They can spice up chicken. I mean, whatever you've got on your mind, whatever flavor you're looking for, they have it. it at the one and only Savory Spice. What I like to say, by the way, 2 locations. One in Nashville on Charlotte Pike. L&L Market is the location. You'll find them there. Tell them I said hello. Or if you're down Franklin Way, they're just off the square next to Gray's Pharmacy. Stop by, smell the smells, see the sights, and buy some delicious spices. Up that food game by upping your spice game. And you up your spice game at the one and only Savory Spice. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, a couple of minutes before we have to make way to the top of the hour news. But never do you fear, we have 2 more hours to go. We welcome your telephone calls and your comments on the super text line or the phone line, 615-737-9986. Same numbers for both of those. We give those often and as quickly as possible just to keep you on your toes. 8164 says, I'm watching you look at your phone. That's because sometimes Bell doesn't know. I mean, did we not go to break there? Were people just watching me look at my phone?
Well, once in a while, I like to give them a little behind the scenes, especially if I think you're going to pick your nose.
I know. I love that, too, which is the reason that I've been begging for a monitor in this room so that I can be aware when you're not doing your job. That's my favorite part of not having a monitor, not being aware so that I can, stick the old finger up the nose or, scratch my butt or whatever.
Well, they can't see that on camera. It's the nose part's the only thing that gets any value.
Oh, I disagree, my friend. I've been told that I've been told differently about where my butt is. My grandmother used to say that. You got your butt on your shoulders.
Your grandmother said that?
Yes, she used to tell me if I was grumpy that I had my butt on my shoulders. That's old school, baby. That's old. I do have my butt on my shoulders today, too, to a certain degree. We will cover Donald Trump and the Trump trial, as it were, in the next hour of the show. We'll also talk to someone in the midst of the swamp in Washington, D.C. Congressman Scott DeJarlais will join us to give his assessment of what went down over the weekend. That's coming up in mere moments on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It's the Matt Murphy Show. Here comes news right now.
Jonathan Carl.
The 3 key witnesses in this case are an adult film star, a lawyer who has literally served jail time for lying under oath, and the top executive at the National Enquirer. I mean, this is hardly a shining moment for American democracy.
Court adjourned earlier than usual today. It was due in part because one of the jurors had a dental emergency. The Supreme Court will hear arguments later this week whether Mr. Trump should have immunity from prosecution for anything he did while he was in office. Today, the justices are weighing whether banning homeless people from sleeping outside amounts to cruel and unusual punishment. Some states say it's unconstitutional to fine or arrest them if there's no shelter space.
If someone, for example, is being attacked, we're going to go in.
The president's in public housing, so we ought to be able to do it for everybody.
The Reverend Dr. William Barber at a Housing Not Handcuffs rally in Washington. Classes at Columbia University are being held virtually today as pro-Palestinian protests continue on campus. Police made several arrests over the weekend, but Deputy Commissioner of Legal Affairs Michael Berger says without a crime, they have no jurisdiction over the privately owned campus.
If someone, for example, is being attacked, we're going to go into Columbia University as we would to a private home to help protect that person.
Just before the hour, the Dow is up. You're listening to ABC News.
Kraft Body Scan is here for all of us, for all of you. Did you know we spend more on health care than any other country in the world? But we are amongst the least healthy of nations? Well, a big part of that is because our system focuses on treating after you get symptoms, after you've been diagnosed, as opposed to preventative maintenance. At Kraft Body Scan, they are all about flipping that script. Stay healthy and get peace of mind with Kraft Body Scan's heart and lung scan, available for you right now. A full CT of your heart and lungs lasts just about 5 minutes. It can give you an example of what's going on in your body. You can detect even the slightest of irregularities. Normally, this thing costs over $1,300 per person per scan, and right now it's available for you for $149, and they invite you to bring a friend or a loved one or a spouse. Anybody that you want to bring with you, bring them on. If they're a loved one in your life, a couple's scan for $149, offering that peace of mind at an unbeatable price, a way to introduce themselves to all of you in the Nashville community. Call 615-436-1000 to schedule that appointment today. 615-436-1000. Spell Kraft with a C and go to craftbodyscan.com. That's craftbodyscan.com. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Matt Murphy, and this is the Matt Murphy Radio Show. We are obviously aware that the trial is ongoing, opening statements ongoing in the trial against Donald J. Trump. Alvin Bragg bringing those charges against him in a courtroom in New York City. We continue to monitor all of that. I don't know why it's not on television. I think it would be great. I mean that sincerely. I think it could bounce Trump by 5 percentage points if it were on television, which I believe is why it's not. I think most involved in this case know that if the American people actually get to the truth, unfiltered and unscrewed with by the mainstream media, then they will figure out what this is all about. Perhaps to speak on this, but particularly to speak on activities over the weekend, we welcome back to the show Congressman Scott DeJarlais, who joins us on the Matt Murphy hotline. Hello, Congressman. I hope you're doing well, sir.
I am. Good afternoon.
Well, a good afternoon to you. Boy, oh boy. I mean, the weekend, it's got a lot of conservatives, libertarians, and the like. Those of us who are concerned about overspending, those of us who are concerned more about our borders as opposed to the borders of other countries. Look, I think we can walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. I think we can share concern with what's going on overseas, but focus on what's happening here at home. Doesn't feel like that's what happened over the weekend, Scott. Give me your assessment.
Yeah, well, one, it didn't all have to happen this weekend. I don't know what the sense of urgency was, especially the fact that we've been fighting against the Senate supplemental package now for several months, where they wanted just to write basically a check for $95 billion to divide among securing 3 other countries' borders, but not our own. And that was kind of our beef with it. And we actually had tried to carve out Israel funding a month or two ago and did that as a standalone, but the Senate wouldn't accept that because they wanted this whole package. And, there is issues with arm depletion in Ukraine in terms of 155s and some anti-aircraft. But if you look at the history of that war, it's gone on 26 months, over 2 years. And we've spent about a little over $40 billion in armaments already. There's another $60 billion, maybe $70 billion that we're spent on. We don't exactly know what, propping up their government probably. This bill had $61 billion. I would say the arms need was probably closer to 10 or 11 billion. So for sake of transparency to the American people, one, Biden needs to go on TV and tell everyone why this is important, why we're sending our treasure there, and have a strategy to win. This basically funds a stalemate for the next 8 months, and then they're going to be back asking for more. So the Ukraine funding was very contentious. The Israel funding was not that contentious till they added $9 billion on to support Hamas. They call it humanitarian aid for Gaza, but we know how that works when you send money into a kind of a rogue country. Most of it doesn't get to where it's supposed to go. And a good example is the $6 billion that Biden unfroze to Iran, who said they could only use it on humanitarian and hospitals and things like that. Well, all their proxies, their terror proxies throughout the region were promptly restocked. So there's so many things wrong with this. I'll stop so you can ask me more specific questions.
No. I know I'm enjoying listening to your assessment and analysis. Go one step further and talk to me about what Taiwan has to do with any of this. Why did that get added on?
Okay. Well, the thing with Taiwan is that we all know that President Xi wants to take Taiwan back, and he's got a strategy to do that. It may be 2-3 years off. Everyone's using the 2027 timeline. It used to be 2030, and everything with China seems to happen quicker than we expect. So basically, Taiwan is preparing for their version of a D-Day landing as China crosses the channel. And so the Indo-Pacific region, including Guam and Japan and many of our other allies over there, are very nervous because of potential Chinese aggression. So that was put in there. I've sat in, hours and hours and hours of classified briefings on really all three of these, whether it's Ukraine, Israel, the North Korea, the situation with China and Taiwan. And the best way to win that fight is for it never to happen. And so I do think helping Taiwan fortify is not a bad idea. Again, the timing just to lump that in, I don't know, and I don't even know if it's the right amount.
What is that portion? Do you know off the top of your head?
It was about $8 billion.
Okay.
And honestly, the extra 50 or 60 billion or 50 billion going to Ukraine right now to prop up their government or whatever that it is they're doing with all that money would be better spent in the Indo-Pacific region, preparing or trying to prevent China from ever engaging in the war, because that would be a very costly war for all of us. It literally could lead to World War III. China, Russia, North Korea, Iran are all kind of bundling together, forming a little axis. And so that one needs some attention, but it needs to be better understood. And it is a real threat that is coming.
So help me understand, or do you know what the total amount roughly has been? Let's include this, I guess it's $61 billion additional dollars, because the conventional wisdom is this will get to the president's desk post haste and he'll sign it. So what total amount are we talking about? By my math, I think we're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of $150 billion.
Yeah, actually, on this supplemental bill itself, I call it the supplemental bill because that's what the Senate had. It was $95 billion. Our side, or Johnson, decides to break it in three pieces, so people who are against Ukraine could vote against Ukraine. If you're for against Israel, you could vote for that. Same with Taiwan. So there was basically three bills separated that, ironically, and adds up to about $95 billion.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Scott, but what I mean is I'm trying to figure out how much money the United States of America has sent to Ukraine so far.
Yeah, okay. I'm tracking with you now. Probably closer to $170 billion.
Wow.
And of that, only about 50 would be military or lethal aid, which is kind of what we committed to. So, not that that's a small number, it's a huge number. But if you think our annual defense spending is around 800, maybe 850 billion now, because it keeps going up, that's over 10% of our annual defense spending that's gone to Ukraine. And it's, again, not all for lethal aid. We don't know exactly where it's all going, and I think that's what people have a problem with.
Well, there lies the heart of the concern, is that 170 billion, 50 billion of it you can track to like military aid, military weapons, ammunition, these types of things. That leaves and I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt here. That leaves $120 billion of money that are Congressman, we legitimately don't know where it's going or what it's being used for.
You can probably break it down a little bit, but there's a lot of blank spaces in there, and we've been begging the DOD to be transparent and tell the people where that money is going. Almost every month when I get a briefing, I ask for that. I ask for the Biden administration to go on TV and tell the people why we're spending this money and what the reason are. Because degrading one of our major adversaries can have some advantages, but we don't know exactly what's happening. It looks like a World War I trench warfare that's going on right now. And from what I gather, nothing's going to change for at least another year. And so we're looking at another $60 billion now. What happens in 8 months? Are they coming back, with their hands out for the same amount? And there's no strategy that I can tell to come to the peace table or to win that war.
So what do your colleagues in Washington, D.C., who are more hawkish on this front? You obviously, we're talking with Representative Scott DeJarlais, and he voted against these measures over the weekend. What do they say when you ask for accountability, when you say that we need to demand that the Department of Defense offer us some semblance of a line item on where the money's going, and that Ukraine, we demand that from Ukraine? what's the response when you request that we show the American people what their money's being spent on?
You generally get the "we'll get back to you" response. We'll take that into account and reach back out. So, I mean, that's very frustrating because I've heard it many times.
So we're hearing that some of this money is going into Ukrainian pensions. Are you hearing the same thing?
As well. I've heard that as well, and that's what, certainly. But I mean, the number one issue in America right now is our own border security. So people are pissed off about this, and they should be. $95 billion to secure other countries' borders. And what happened with the border bill on this one? They're trying to blame Republicans because it was pulled out of this package because they knew if there was border security in this foreign aid package, the Senate would reject it. So they separated that part, which is basically H.R. 2 minus E-Verify. So still a strong border bill. That was brought down in rules, so it came to floor under suspension. I voted for that, so did every Republican, and interestingly, 5 Democrats. But it failed because it needed 289, and it only got, 218 or 220. I can't remember how many were there voting. But it was designed to fail. So I think as soon as we get back in a week, we put the exact same bill on the floor under a rule and hold those 5 Democrats who needed cover for their election, because this is not just a Republican problem. It's a nationwide problem that Democrats are feeling the heat too, and it's a message we can win on. So that bill needs to come back to the floor under a rule. Then it only takes a simple majority to pass. It'd be really interesting if those 5 Democrats who voted for it Saturday all of a sudden have a change of heart and vote against it.
All right, so I'm just breaking down some of the monies that we're talking about that total into the $95 billion. You mentioned $61 billion for Ukraine. Talk to me about the debate, if any, regarding Gaza humanitarian aid. And you brought up the concern that most of us recognize as so legitimate, that anything going to Gaza will go through the hands of Hamas, and they will strip, whether it's monies or food, whatever it is, they're going to use for their own purposes what they want to use before anything trickles down to the Palestinian people.
And it's going to happen. Yes, they'll show pictures of water and food trucks getting to the right people, but when you're talking $9 billion in aid, there's no way to keep track of that. There's supposed to be safeguards and guardrails, but that's a very condensed area over there, and it's under Hamas control. I kind of get a kick out of these Palestinian protesters, or the anti-Israel protesters that we're seeing pop up all across America, and they were there in force in the Capitol this weekend. There was probably 100 of them in the tunnel as we were going over to vote for all this. And my question to them, if they're pro-Palestinian, why are they not over there fighting, helping Israel get rid of Hamas? So either they're Palestinian and anti-Hamas, or they're Palestinian pro-Hamas. And Hamas is a terrorist group, and it needs to be eradicated, and that's what Israel's doing. It's the right thing to do. So I didn't get a chance to ask these protesters directly, but if we had to fight for our freedom, if Palestine wants to have a free nation and get rid of Hamas's rule, they've got to fight against them, and instead they're all just over here complaining to us.
I don't think you're weak on issues involving foreign policy and supporting American allies. Scott, you and I have known each other long enough. I think that you believe in analyzing any given situation and responding accordingly with strength, and supporting those that we believe are our brothers in forwarding the concepts of democracy and the spirit of democracy around the globe. All of that to say, why did this happen with so many Republicans supporting it over the weekend, when I talked to so many conservatives, and I mean, you clearly have so many issues with it. How do your colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle justify their votes?
Well, if you don't have the benefit like I do of being on armed services and having all the briefings, I think that every one of these issues is very important. The Taiwan issue is, the Ukraine issue is, the Israel issue is, certainly Iran. And I think we need to strategically balance, our funding for our own military, their military, our allies, NATO. It's interesting that, the Democrats the other day were bragging in a hearing about how they've got up to 11 of the 33 countries in NATO now paying their dues, like that's a good thing. But you remember a few years ago, they were villainizing Trump for destroying NATO because he was asking them to pay their fair share, to pay their 2% of GDP. So, yeah, I mean, I get the global strategy, and we are global leaders, and in the world, and we need to do the things we need to do, but we've only got so much money. We've got our own military to fund. We've got our own borders to secure. And I think the real rub right now, and I didn't answer your question about my colleagues, but the real rub is everyone sees what's going on in this country. Anywhere from 7, 9, 10 million people have entered this country, up to 2 million gotaways, and every gotaway probably has a nefarious intent. Otherwise, they would have turned themselves in and tried to go through the amnesty process and get the free visas, get the free cell phones, get the free education, the free health care, and all that. So the ones that don't turn themselves in are the real threat, and that's what Americans want to be focused on right now. So all these other things are important, and you say we can walk and chew gum. Yes, we can, and this should have been slowed down. It should have been rammed through, but I think a lot of my colleagues felt the need with Israel because the 200-300 missiles that were sent there were drones that depleted the air defense system, so they felt an urgency to get them taken care of. They know Ukraine is very short on 155s and anti-aircraft, and they fear Russia could push further east. And then, the Taiwan thing, again, it's a pending fight. So all those things have merit, but they needed to be kind of digested, looked at, transparent, say this is what we need, this is where it's going. But, the government's so great about just making a big Christmas tree bill, and that's what this was. And it should have been broken down. But the House actually is putting all these back together, as you probably know. All three of those foreign bills, no matter how you voted on them, yes, no, whatever, they all come back together when they go to the Senate. And we didn't get a final vote on that, which I would have been a no, but maybe others would too. So it goes back to the Senate.
And by the way, can you help me understand how that's possible? That they split things up, it's voted on 3 separate ways, and then it goes over to the Senate. I thought that what was voted on in the House goes to the Senate, but they're putting it back together again?
Right. It was a Pelosi deal. It's called MERV, and I can't remember what the acronym stands for. It's MIRV as in Victor. You can look it up. But it's a procedural vote where you split things up, and then they come back together in the end. So it kind of gives people political cover, which is crap, because in the end, it's pretty much the supplemental that we rejected for the last.
Uh-oh. We'll give it a second. Scott, you there? I think
yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I lost you for just a second. All right, so only a couple of minutes left. Let me get to the heart of the political question, and that is the future of the Speaker. I don't see any good way to do anything right now with regard to the Speaker of the House. Everybody tells me that Mike Johnson's a good man, a good conservative, good Christian guy. I don't know what led him to this decision as the best thing that he could do. It seems like a disaster to me, but that's just me sitting here in Nashville, Tennessee. What's the future of Mike Johnson? Do you think there'll be any changes between now and Election Day?
I think it would be a mistake, and not because I'm a huge Mike Johnson fan. I just don't know where we go on the bench after this. We went pretty deep to get him. We have a 1-seat majority now that Mike Gallagher's left this weekend. And so it was hard to function when we had 5 seats. So I don't think a change in speaker is going to be a very good look for the Republican Party. We basically can use the rest of our time between now and November as we try to win back the White House in messaging, which we can win on in terms of border and others, economy and whatnot. We need to continue our investigations because we're in control of the committees. And, we probably need to keep our heads down. We're not going to pass any great conservative legislation that the Senate's going to take up or the White House is going to sign, and that was probably never the case in this Congress. But, I don't think a change in speakership right now is to anyone's advantage.
Scott, thank you for giving us your analysis. Thank you for everything you do in Washington, D.C., and we'll talk again very soon. I appreciate the conversation.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
All right. Take care. There's Congressman Scott DeJarlais, a no vote over the weekend. There were only 3 yay votes in the state of Tennessee. David Kustoff. We've got to call out to David, right? His office. I think we called him a week or so ago trying to get him back on.
Yeah, it was after the FISA vote.
And Kustoff was a yay on FISA.
Correct.
And he's a yay on this, too. We've invited Kustoff on the show. He represents, Cohen represents Memphis, and the area just east of Memphis, the Germantown area over there in Shelby County, that's Kustoff's zone. And then what's the other one? Fleischman voted in favor of it. I don't know a lot about Fleischman, why he would vote in favor of this thing. I don't know that we've talked to Fleischman on the air. He's East Tennessee. And,
I think we've had him on one time.
Maybe so. I want to say that we've covered all of the – have we done Harshbarger?
No.
Okay, so we haven't obviously, Steve Cohen's not coming on with us anytime soon.
Right, yeah.
Harshbarger's not been on, and and the only other one that we've not had on. I don't remember Maybe we have had Fleischman on. I know we've
everybody
had
else obviously is semi-regularly.
Sure. I tried to contact Mark. We haven't had Mark Green on since our conversation.
Since you ran him out of
I
office?
didn't run him out of office. The conversation just went a little sideways. That's all.
Sideways? You made the man quit.
He came back.
Yeah, but it's more fun just to say you made him quit.
Well, but he came back. Yes, it is true that we had an interview with him, and like literally an hour later, he tendered his resignation letter. That is true. That's a fact.
Why can't you make Biden mad?
I'd get him on the show with me. Hey, maybe if I get Phil Williams on, he'll resign. What do you think? 124 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Tennessee Men's Clinic is men's health and men's health only. That doesn't mean that you ladies get to tune out over the next 60 seconds, though, because I want to talk to you as well. Have you noticed in your man a lack of motivation, energy, or drive, whether it manifests itself doing yard work in the backyard? Perhaps you don't have the motivation to get out and about on these beautiful weekends, or maybe it's a gym deal, or, maybe it's the bedroom. Now, I understand that's a sensitive topic, none of Murphy's business, right? But it is very much your business. And if you've noticed this, there are solutions available to you at the Tennessee Men's Clinic. What are you waiting for? They will develop an action plan specific to your needs. Their qualified urologists have done this for years. Evan Bass created this company for men's health and men's health alone over 10 years ago, and now a brand new location in Cool Springs. So whether it's Cool Springs or the Midtown location, make the call, make the appointment, and get this done. The biggest complaint that men have to me when they talk to me about this is that they did not do it years ago. Let's get it started, men. 615-208-9090. 615-208-9090. TennesseeMen'sClinic.com for Tennessee Men's Clinic. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. John writes in and says, "That's it, I quit." Oh, wait a minute. I just got caught up in the moment. I know. You'll never quit me, John. You're one of my favorites. 615-737-9986. 5718 writes in on the membersnutrition.com super text line and wants to know what vote we are discussing. Well, we're voting. Yeah, I don't know what you're posting on regarding the 14 that voted against Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel omnibus. I don't know what votes you're referring to. DeJarlais was a no vote on the Ukraine funding. He might have voted yay on Israel. I thought he was a no on all of it though. Actually, I think I have the office of the clerk. This is House Bill 8035. This is it's the Ukraine security supplemental. And the separation on the Ukraine supplemental. So I suppose that perhaps DeJarlais or some others voted in favor of the Taiwanese supplemental or in favor of the Israeli supplemental, but voted against the Ukrainian supplemental as it was split up for that purpose.
Yeah,
So.
Rose actually put out a press release saying it didn't mention the Taiwanese supplemental, but he voted for the Israeli and against the Ukraine.
Yeah, and what you're looking at, and I think I get it now. I've got it now. What you're looking at, 5718, is the individuals that voted against all three. And by the way, just for the record, if I were in Congress, I would have voted against all three right now, too, because we do not have the money to spend on our needs here in the United States of America, much less on the needs of others across the globe. Sharon is next up in Fayetteville. Sharon, thank you for your call. How are you?
I'm fine. First of all my love and respect to you. I think you're terrific.
Thank you.
I have a gnawing question, and I respect the answer you're going to give me. If we had war on the horizon and there was a call for enlisting, how do you think liberals, our young liberals, what do you think they will do? And the next question is, if a draft seemed necessary, what would our young liberals do?
Wow, that's a great question. All right, so here's what I'll do, Sharon. I'll let you listen on the air. Fabulous question, and I will consider it, and I'll answer it on the other side. I've got a quick break to take, but I'll answer this question on the other side, and Belkay will make sure that I do.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for listening, and thank you for the question. So the nature of the question is we have something that calls Americans to arms. Perhaps it's an attack on an American interest or an installation. Perhaps it's, I don't know, American boots on the ground in Ukraine, whatever it might be. There's a call to arms. Now, Sharon did not distinguish between a general, hey, please, we need signups versus a conscription, which would be selective service. I'll answer both of those questions coming up in just a moment because I do think that, let me put it this way. Liberals have a difficult time defining what a woman is. I think they'll find that definition if there was ever conscripted service again. It's 1:32 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I mean, these rebates at Nashville Safe House just won't quit, baby. I'm loving to tell you about this. Mark and his team at Nashville Safe House has made sure that he's extended the rebates for maximum benefit to you, the customer. Now, always, when you walk to Nashville Safe House and you walk through the incredible selection, better than anything you've ever seen in your life, the incredible selection of safes, vault doors, corporate safes, jewelry safes, gun safes galore, you'll find that you do not pay sales tax on gun safes in the state of Tennessee, and you certainly don't pay it at Nashville Safe House. That's a guarantee. Plus, they have some of the finest rebates in the industry. And here's the kicker. This is going to sound odd. They charge you for delivery. What? What are you talking about? Well, because it costs money to deliver your safe, because they don't embed the cost in the price of the safe like some other guys. Thirdly, they don't subcontract it out. That means Mark pays his team. That means you don't have somebody from a foreign country delivering your safe, or somebody that you don't know or that can't communicate with you delivering your safe. You have trusted employees of Nashville Safe House delivering your safe to your home. I'm telling you, folks, it's a no-brainer. Let's get to Nashville Safe House today. The selection, incredible. They're on 4th Avenue South across the street from City Cemetery, or online at NashvilleSafeHouse.com, NashvilleSafeHouse.com. Super Talk 99.7 WTN 137. Happy to have you with us on the Matt Murphy portion of the broadcast day. The Trump trial has suspended for the day. I guess it's my understanding that an alternate juror had a dental emergency. Knock your teeth out. No, some sort of dental emergency led to the necessity for a suspension of the trial this afternoon. It will recommence tomorrow morning.
That's kind of odd. I mean, medical emergency, that makes sense, but dental emergency? Yeah,
Seriously, you chip a tooth, you knock a tooth out. I mean, you maybe have, a toothache, a crown
punched
going
him
bad.
in the mouth.
Donald Trump gave him a pop. Come over here. How are you voting? Where are you? You voting good? You voting? You going to vote again? You going to vote against your guy?
Maybe it was the judge that did that.
Maybe. So suspension of hostilities in the courtroom there in New York. They will recommence tomorrow a.m. Not a lot coming out of that. Why didn't we televise that thing? Am I not reading this right? That would have been a huge win for Donald Trump, in my estimation.
And that explains why we didn't televise it.
Oh, yeah. I've answered my own question there, right? Yeah, that's the reason. So Sharon was her name, has asked a question about what I believe the leftist reaction would be. One, leftist would immediately be against any and all level of conscription. I don't know that I don't know what would have to happen in order to create a dynamic by which we actually utilized the selective service. But if Congress and the president were to reinstate, it would take an act of Congress and signature of the president of the United States to reinstate the military draft. And I think that's the nature of what Sharon's talking about. What would happen if that were the case? Where would these political leftists be? Well, they would be and will always be against the reinstatement of a military draft. And I certainly am against it as a matter of practice unless it is determined to be absolutely necessary, which is why I understand the utilization of the selective service. For those that don't know, the selective service system, at least as far as I understand it, I don't know if it's changed in any way since I went through the process, and that was a long, long time ago. But the selective service system instructs able-bodied 18-year-old males to sign themselves up and to, identify themselves as available for and eligible for the draft lottery system should the draft ever go back into effect. It's my understanding what would happen is that if the United States Congress and the president were to reinstate that draft, the United States Selective Service System would engage in a draft lottery similar to the one that was happening during the Vietnam era, is the one that most of us harken back to. I was not around during that time, so I don't know intimately. Maybe some of you do. I don't know intimately how involved that got and how fair it was.
Do you know, because I've thought about this before from watching MASH, was the draft for Vietnam any different than it was for World War II and the Korean conflict?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I have always operated under the assumption that it was not. It was just the attitude regarding the conflict was very different.
So they did the same kind of lottery thing?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so, but I don't know so. It is my understanding, based on my reading of history, that in World War II, there was not a tremendous need to lean on the draft because, particularly after Pearl Harbor, men of a certain age volunteered their services to aid in the effort to rid the world of the evils of Imperial Japan and obviously Adolf Hitler and his tyrannical Third Reich. So I don't know that there was any substantial difference, except there was a different time and a different attitude about the conflicts themselves. That said, the Secret Service system continues to exist. The lottery would, I'm just reading here from the Selective Service System website, the lottery would establish the priority of call based on birth dates of registrants. The first men drafted would be those turning age 20 during the calendar year of the lottery. For example, if the draft were held in 2020, those men born in 2000 would be considered first. Men turning 21 in the year of the draft would be second priority. 22 would be third, and so on until a man turns 26, at which time he is over the age of liability. Younger men would not be called in that year until men in the 20 to 25 age group were called. Because of the enormous impact of the lottery, it would be conducted publicly with full coverage by the media. Accredited observers from public interest groups would have full access to the proceedings. The lottery process would begin with 2 large air lottery drawing machines. First, 365 for men born in a leap year, 366. Balls having both a date and a month on each of them would be loaded into the machines. This is fascinating to me. Anybody else? They have all of this planned out. All of this is planned out, Sharon. This is amazing. Thank you for your call. I didn't know until I looked it up just now. Second, balls with a number from 1 to 365 or 366 for men born in a leap year on each are loaded into the second machine. Official observers certified that all air mix balls were loaded. This is done in full view of observers, officials, and the media. One lottery ball is drawn randomly from the machine containing those with dates marked on them. One is drawn from the machine containing balls with numbers 1 through 165. The date and number are paired to establish the sequence number for each birth date. For example, if the date August 4th is drawn from the date machine and the sequence 32 is drawn from the numbers machine at the same time, then those men turning 20 on August 4th would be ordered for induction processing only after men whose birthdays drew sequence number 1 through 31. Now, that's the technicalities of all of this. But Sharon, more to your point. I believe that we live in an era, I know we live in an era where, sadly, our friends on the political left don't seem to be able to identify what a woman is and what a woman isn't, what a man is and what a man isn't. The lines have gotten very, very blurry for them. I believe those lines would be very clear were there a military draft to be reinstated. If that were to occur, you would have had something significant happen. I believe the significance of that something would have to be along the lines of, God forbid, a nuclear weapon being unleashed on the world or an attack of some sort, a significant attack of some sort here in the United States of America, on our homeland. If that were to happen, I believe that you would see men selected in our lottery first. I do not believe that women would be considered, and I don't think the political left would say one word about it. Because they know. Now, if women want to sign up, great. Fabulous. But I do not believe that they will be conscripted amongst or in front of men. That's not the way that it should work, and I don't believe that that's the way that it would work. I have a hard time believing that these same leftists, what did Limbaugh used to call them, feminazis? These same types of feminazis would be screaming equality if that equality meant inclusion in a military draft to go fight a conflict of that importance. I think it would be a monumentous, earth-shattering, history-making event that would lead us to this. I do not foresee a time where there is conscription in the United States military any longer. Because I still believe, and maybe I'm being naive, but I believe much like happened in Gulf War I, much like happened in Afghanistan and in the aftermath of in the aftermath of 9/11, you would see able-bodied young men and some older men stepping up to service without the need for conscription. I hope that answers your question. Dave is in Woodstock next. Hey, Dave, how are you?
Hey, long time no talk to you, Matt.
What's up?
When I turned 18, I had to go down to the local Selective Service Board office and register for the draft. And if I remember right, they had a lottery, and what they did, they had like birth dates inside like little plastic capsules, like kind of like what you'd see toys in a bubblegum machine in. And they would roll them things around in a big thing like a giant bingo mixer and pull one out and stick it on the board. So that's kind of how they did that back in 1973. And my number was fairly low, but they had stopped drafting by the time, it got around to me. So I kind of missed that one, thank goodness.
Yeah, you barely missed it too, Dave. Good for you. I understand that there might be a time in our future, and thank you, Dave, for the call. Good to hear from you again. Call us back ASAP, my friend. I hesitate to consider what would have to happen to necessitate my support of a military draft again, but it's out there. The possibility exists. If it is an existential crisis and I like to use that term, but if the future of the United States of America is at stake, then we have to call on good and able-bodied men to defend it, and women. I mean, is it sexist of me to suggest that I do not believe that they would draft women?
No.
I mean, do you?
I honestly, everything has become so upside down. You know, in the 60s, the liberals were vehemently anti-war. They wanted the draft ended. Now I think they'd probably be the first ones to demand a draft.
Well, they're desperate to get us into this Ukraine thing, it seems. I don't know. I don't. Maybe it's an old school way of thinking. I just don't believe that leftists particularly would be angling to demand that women get equal treatment under the law when it comes to a military draft.
What if you identify as a woman, but you're a man?
There would be a lot of that going on. A lot of these yellow bellies.
But
I mean, that would be a convenient way to get out of it, right?
I mean, wouldn't we have to honor that?
Unfortunately, I mean, we live in a day and time where they would. I wouldn't say that we'd have to, but they would. I mean,
I'm saying just to be intellectually consistent.
You would see what you would see. I mean, let's just put the hypothetical on the table. If America had some sort of bomb dropped on it, or if there was some sort of military conflict that necessitated reenacting this the Selective Service, that would be a big deal. But I don't think it would preclude if you drafted men who went to whatever location you demand them to go to, and they're like, I'm a conscientious objector. I can't fight. I won't fight. I don't think you're going to jail those people. I think you're looking for people that are willing, maybe not willing to volunteer, but are willing to, if called to service, serve. I mean, how is your military served by a bunch of yellow bellies that want nothing to do with it?
Well, and for the last 23 years, the concept of the draft has been so foreign to everybody because right after, 9/11, they didn't need to draft anybody.
Right.
Most people were volunteering left and right.
Well, and I believe that's what would happen nowadays. I believe that if we saw something big enough to necessitate a military draft, we would not need a military draft because good men would come to the gate of their country to sacrifice their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor. Kind of circling back to how we started the show with the Declaration of Independence. Larry has a thought on this out of Clarksville. Hello, Larry.
Hello, Matt. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
And I do want to talk about the Selective Service, but I do disagree with you a little bit on something you said earlier. The funds going to Ukraine that we cannot identify are coming back to Biden and Soros and the Democrat Party. I mean, there's no way anybody could convince me that we have handed them all this money that's unaccounted for all this time, and we know Zelensky has info on Biden. But that being said, I signed up at 17. I would go back again today if it was under different leadership. And the ones that we've got, who are we going to count on to go back in today? The pink-haired, pink song-wearing, I got to watch my language. Who are we going to count on to go back today other than the old vets? And the old vets know better than to serve under this sorry POS that's in our office.
Well, I understand the pink-haired, panty-wearing, tree-hugging crowd, right? Okay, but I meet so many good young people nowadays, Larry. I mean, if you get out and you just look around you, you'll find them. There are a lot of good. I used to slam on millennials a lot, and I stopped doing so because I think it ignored a significant amount of pushback. The pendulum kind of swung the other way with regard to how the 20-somethings view America, and I think they're pushing back against this woke nonsense, this cancel culture woke nonsense. That said, I'll say this real quick because I've got to scoot. My nephew, I'll tell you a story in a second about my nephew. I don't have time to do it right now because Belle's screaming at me. But my nephew was going into the United States Air Force and decided against it because of who Commander-in-Chief is. Larry, it's good to hear from you again. I can't tell you how much I'm glad that you're calling me because that means that you're feeling a little bit better, and that means a lot to me. You're one of my number one fans, and I'm one of yours. It's 1:53 on Super Talk. Hey, folks, when you go to membersnutrition.com, I believe you will see with your own eyes the Members Nutrition difference. I know I did. I sat down with Greg and his team at Members Nutrition, and they explained a couple of things, a few of the basic concepts as to how they can provide you incredible vitamins and supplements at amazing prices where members save up to 50% off retail on a daily basis. First and foremost, everything is made right here in the good old USA. That's important to me. It's important to Greg and his team. And I think it's important to you, too. What I put in my body, I want to know that it's made with top quality ingredients. I want to know that it's made in good and sanitary conditions. And I can't guarantee that if it's made overseas, especially in certain countries overseas. Well, right here in the USA, I can know and I can have assurances that that is the case. Secondarily, because they don't have brick and mortar, because they are a web-based company, based right here in Tennessee, but web-based nonetheless, membersnutrition.com, they don't have to pay that overhead. That means they can provide quality product for less money by not having that brick and mortar store. Isn't that nice? And they have incredible product, too. I shop at Members Nutrition. I encourage you to do so as well. They have detox supplements, energy, relaxation, men's health, women's health, sports nutrition, weight management, all available at a fingertips moment. Go to members. I say fingertips because you type in membersnutrition.com. That's membersnutrition.com. Tell them Matt Murphy sent you to Members Nutrition. Hour number 3 starts right now. Super Talk 99.7. WTN. Glad to have you with us. Thank you for being around. It is 4 minutes after 2 o'clock. We'll get to more of your telephone calls and your comments on the Members Nutrition Super Text line coming up in mere moments. I am pleased to welcome into our studios a gentleman that knows all about the goings-on of the General Assembly this session as it slowly but surely winds down. The good, the bad, and the ugly with Senator Jack Johnson, who is also Senate Majority Leader, as he joins us in studio this afternoon. Hello, Jack.
Hey, Matt.
Good to see you.
Well, thanks for having me back.
Let's chew on the elephant in the room first, and then we'll talk about some of the good things that perhaps are coming out of this week of the session. The governor, we heard from him. He made the announcement that he is of the belief, and obviously, I guess being his legislation, he has a lot of control over this, that the Education Scholarship Fund bill for this session, at very least, will not happen. It will not get past the General Assembly. I know that you've been in consult with the governor. I know you've been working closely with him on the Senate side of things, as have your colleagues in the House of Representatives been working on that side. Just walk us through where we came from and how we got here.
Well, here's the good news. We've had a really, really good conversation about this, and I think there is broad, widespread support for a school choice bill. How you roll it out, the mechanics of it. It's a complex issue in some ways. Some ways it's a pretty simple issue. But, yes, the governor announced back in the fall he would like to pursue this as an administration bill this year. So Leader Lamberth and I introduced it, got it referred to committees. The governor provided funding for it in the budget. And we had a really good conversation. The House and the Senate kind of went down different paths. That's not uncommon, especially on complex bills. But we usually try to come together and negotiate our differences, and we really, really tried on this one, and just couldn't quite get there. You know, we're not a full-time legislature. We want to get the people's business done and go home. And at some point, you got to realize, hey, we're nearing the end of our session. Maybe we should spend the summer and fall talking about this and bring it back in January. And I am 100% confident that it will be reintroduced. And one of the good things is the funding for it, the $144 million is appropriated, as proposed to be appropriated by the governor, is in the budget. It's still in there. We're not spending one penny of that money, and it's in the base and will be there for us. So as long as we can figure out the mechanics, we'll get this bill passed in January.
What do you believe in the last week or two? I'm sure you and I have not had these conversations, but I'm certain that you were a part of the conversation between the Senate and the House, trying to see what differences were solvable and what perhaps were a little more challenging. What would you characterize as the thing that prevented a coming together of the two bodies?
So the House decided to utilize this legislation as a means through which to make some reforms in traditional public education. And that's fine. The caption allowed for that. The Senate stuck more closely to just a pure school choice bill as proposed by the governor. The Senate made a couple of minor modifications, primarily dealing with the ability to have choice between public schools. And I think that's a fair point to make. If you're talking about school choice, it's not just about homeschooling, about private schooling. It's also about, there might be a better public school that's near you. So including that in there. The House, on the other hand, wanted to deal with teacher evaluations, testing, student accountability, a number of other things in the bill, and many of which were some really good ideas, and the Senate agreed with those. Unfortunately, though, we did get bogged down on a couple of things that the House wanted to do relative to traditional public education that the Senate was not comfortable with, and that's where our negotiations broke down. But again, we've got all summer and fall. If we were like Washington, and I'm glad we're not, we'd be in year-round and we'd continue this debate. But we got to put this session to an end, and we'll be back in January.
I mean, do you think, is it a part of the end of debate? I don't want to characterize this in any negative way. I don't want it to seem like I'm doing that, but it feels like because we're in an election year, there's more of a willingness on the part of the players. I'm not putting words in your mouth that, hey, let's take a step back. Let's let every member of the House and half of the Senate go back to their respective districts as they are up for re-election and talk to the voters and see where the voters are. Once they have that good and robust conversation leading into the fall, I think they'll come at this with fresh eyes in the winter, in January.
Well, that's a great thing about our system is when you have a high-profile issue like this, and of course there's lots of misinformation out there about the bill and proponents and opponents, more from the opponent side, making allegations about what this bill was intended to do when in fact it's truly about empowering parents. That's it. End of story, case closed. Do you think parents should have more?
Wait a minute, Jack. I thought this was a hidden agenda for the state to take over all private schools.
Well, sadly, some were making that argument, which is just a completely ridiculous argument. No, this is about empowering parents, about parents being able to make decisions that they believe are best for their kids. So, like with a number of other things, I think it will be talked about a lot as people are out on the campaign trail. And the governor will be out there talking about it, and I'll be out there talking about it, as will others, and we will get there. And this isn't just a Tennessee issue. This is a national movement. We're up to, I don't know, it's 9 or 10 states now that have passed it. A number of others are contemplating. Your former home state of Alabama just passed a universal school choice program. Governor Ivey signed it not long ago. Arkansas passed it. So this is a national movement, and it's a positive thing. It's an exciting thing. We're just going to have a little bit more conversation about it.
You know, and for my good friends on the conservative right, who decided that this was some sort of poison pill legislation, or they characterized it in ways that, was always undercover and nefarious and shadowy. I've asked from the beginning if we are in favor generally of parental choice, of school choice for parents, of empowering parents, what does that look like if not this? I don't know what it would look like. It is your money that you're sending to government. If you choose to give an avenue by which you can utilize that money to get into a better educational opportunity, isn't that what we've always said that we wanted?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, and that's the way I've tried to explain it. If you view the money that the state of Tennessee collects through taxation as the state's money, that might lead you down one train of thought. I don't view it that way. Any money the state has belongs to the people of Tennessee, and the state has decided that we are going to appropriate every year $7,000, this is the average statewide, $7,075 to educate a child. There's more money put in by the local governments, but we're just making that money available to those parents and through a scholarship so that they can make those education decisions. So if you believe that the money belongs to the taxpayers, then you should have no reservation about placing that money back in the hands of parents to make educational decisions for their kids. If you think the money belongs to the state or the government, then maybe you would end up having some of these other ridiculous conspiracy theories.
On the school front, it seems that another piece of legislation that's gotten a lot of attention might be a little bit closer to the governor's desk. I don't know exactly where it is now, but this would be giving school systems, with the approval of administration, with the approval of local law authorities, the ability to allow teachers who want to, and I try to put all of these things on it because it's been mischaracterized too, allow teachers who want to go through the rigorous training that would give them the ability to be a last line of defense and act as almost a de facto SRO on campus. You're in favor of this legislation?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And where are we on it?
So the
Senate's passed it.
Senate has passed it, and I was proud to vote for it. It's a really, really good common sense piece of legislation. Again, a lot of misinformation. I could show you dozens, if not hundreds, of emails that I've received from constituents that literally think that this legislation means that we're going to go to Miss Jones, who's a 65-year-old English teacher. She's never touched a weapon, and we're going to hand her a Colt 45 and say,
machine gun. Just give her a machine gun.
We put this in your desk drawer, and if something bad goes down, which is ridiculous, that's not what it does. There are over 500 schools in Tennessee right now that do not have a school resource officer. They're largely in some of our more rural areas. These are the same communities where there might not be any local police, city police officers, and you've got 3 or 4 sheriffs that are patrolling the entire county. And so yet they may have a high school football coach or, a PE coach or a history teacher that's former law enforcement, former military, has a certain skill set. And we're simply empowering those districts, as you said, with the acknowledgement and cooperation of the chief law enforcement officer of the county, the superintendent, and the principal to say, hey, we've got Matt Murphy here. He was a 20-year sheriff's deputy, or he's a former Army Ranger, and we can't hire a school. We've appropriated the money, but it's hard to hire these people, get them in, get them trained. So let's create a system and a policy through which this particular individual can do 40 hours of training a year, the psychological evaluation, all the background checks, all the things that you would have to do in order to become a law enforcement officer and utilize that skill set that they have. So it's a common sense piece of legislation. A lot of districts will never do it because they've got SROs in every school. They got lots of local law enforcement. They don't need it.
You know, Jack, I look at it. I don't mean to diminish the importance of the legislation or the conversation, but there are some that try to mischaracterize this as, you know, there will be, you know, wild, wild west in every school system. I look at some of the check boxes that have to be met in order for this to happen. Local law enforcement, the school system itself, the principals, the administration, the teacher has to be the right mindset. They have to go through the proper training. And you're probably talking, you know, about 20 people total across the system.
Exactly.
But it does give those systems that ability for that safety net to be in place in those particular areas, which is what is so important about the legislation.
Well, and again, if I lived in one of those rural areas and my kids were attending school there and they were trying to hire a school resource officer and had not been able to do so yet, and they came up with this plan to put into place to protect my kids, I would support it 1,000%. God forbid something bad happen in that school, and there's an imminent threat to the kids and the teachers and the faculty of that school. I'd really like to know that there's someone there with training who is armed and can protect those kids and those teachers.
Not only are you the Senate Majority Leader, you're also a resident of the Metro Nashville region. Have you looked into Mayor O'Connell's transit plan at all?
At a very high level. Obviously, we've been a bit distracted by some of the things that are going on up there. But I've not done a deep dive into it. But, you know, that this happened back during Megan Barry's when she was in office, and there was a big conversation about it. I think it overlapped with Mayor David Briley. So it's something Mayor O'Connell talked about when he was campaigning for mayor. So I'm sure it'll be a big topic of conversation.
The reason this came to my mind is because my next subject was about Metro Nashville, specific to the redevelopment of the East Bank, along with the approval of a new football complex that will also serve as concert venue and whatnot on that side of the river. There's also a development project going on in the East Bank, and it's my understanding that you guys are considering legislation that would create. And I don't want to roll my eyes when I say this, but another board, another authority. Help me understand this.
So, yeah, using these types of developmental authorities, we've done this across the state, and where it's basically where you have a project, and it's maybe a pretty big project, but rather than having every single decision that's necessary to be made relative to that project going through the full government body. In this case, it would be the Metro Council. You've got an authority that has a board that can make decisions, just kind of day-to-day decisions about the development. I mean, where the sidewalks are going to go, and different types of things. And so Metro Nashville asked for this authority. The state has put a significant amount of money towards this project, including $500 million towards the stadium. We're giving some money for the new TPAC that will be over there. And obviously the state has an interest. So they did bring forward a bill. My good friend, Senator Mark Pody, who represents part of Davidson County, has been very involved with this. The original proposal had some fairly significant concerns, and Senator Pody has worked hard with the folks at Metro and others to address those concerns. And I think they've got a bill in a final form. I believe we have it up for consideration this evening or this afternoon.
I think it is, and my concern is, it's my understanding, and I could be wrong, and that the state would have no representation on the board.
Not true. So the original version of the bill, I believe, had the constitutional officer serving on there as ex officio members. That'd be our comptroller, our treasurer, and our secretary of state. Then there was a version, I think, that would have the commissioner of economic community development and the commissioner of tourism on there. I think there was some discussion about just having an appointment from the Speaker of the House and the Speaker of the Senate, but they will have the state will have representation on that board, and that's important because, again, it is a partnership between Metro and the state.
So that has changed from the original proposal to today.
Correct.
Because originally it was that the state would have non-voting members, but
right.
you expect that if
They
this
will be
gets
voting
past the
members.
state, they will be
Yes.
voting members.
Absolutely.
Help folks understand why that's important, why the nature of the partnership necessitates that the state have a voting say in all of this.
Well, look, we know we've talked at length on your show about some of the tension between the city of Nashville, Metro Nashville, and the state. I think Mayor O'Connell is trying to reset that chessboard, and the state wants to as well. We want to have a good cooperative working relationship. But when you have a project of this magnitude, literally billions of dollars, and some of that is state money, some of it is local money, it's important that the state have a say in that. And again, this is a common practice when you have a development like this or a project like this to have a board that's dedicated to look just at this project. There is still accountability to both the Metro government through the Metro Council. There will now be accountability back to the state through the General Assembly, whether that's commissioners who are serving on that or if it's appointees by the Speaker of the House and the Speaker of the Senate, so that all eyes can be on this and there'll be a lot of transparency and be ample opportunity for either side to weigh in if that board and that development authority goes in a wrong direction.
It also, and I'm told, and I could be getting this wrong because I admit that I've not done my homework and read the legislation that's in front of you guys today, but that the planning, this new planning board, whatever we're calling it, East Bank, whatnot, would have sole discretion as to decision making regarding the nature of private property. And I mean, I'm just trying to make sure that we're not overextending our boundaries with regard to eminent domain and some of the rules regarding public and private property.
And and it's a very fair point. We don't want to be establishing some board authority, development of authority board that has eminent domain authority. That type of authority should be reserved to duly and constitutionally elected officials.
Right.
That's right. And so that is not in the current version of the bill. It deals with that specific property, the 100 and some odd acres where the Nissan Stadium is now and the parking lot surrounding that. And that's the scope of their authority and where it will lie.
Well, and I'll leave the yelling to someone else because I don't want to yell at I get accused of yelling at the wrong people all the time. I don't want to yell at the wrong person on this, but for the life of me, I don't understand why we have a planning authority in the city of Nashville if we have to get a new board for the East Bank development. Can you? I mean, is there anything you can say to that? I mean, we have a planning board, right?
You do.
Well, then why can't they do this?
Well, I don't want to be the one to argue. It's not my legislation.
I said I wasn't going to do it, but now I'm doing it.
No, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. So you're right. Nashville has a planning commission and zoning and all that, just like every other community does. I think that the proponents of this legislation would tell you that this single project is of a size and scope, and there's an amount of money involved that it deserves to have its own authority. Now, keep in mind, and I keep stressing this, that authority, and if the legislation passed and there's a board put in place, they're still accountable to the Metro Nashville. They're still accountable to the state of Tennessee. Either entity could step in and make corrective action if necessary. But when it comes to making just day-to-day decisions about how that development will take place, it's better to have some folks whose eyes are solely on that. I think that's the argument that proponents of legislation
look, a lot of politics, they love blue ribbon commissions, they love panels, they love task forces, because it's been my experience that that gives and I'm not saying that this is the case in this unique situation. I'm saying that broadly it gives those politicians plausible deniability when constituents who don't like certain decisions that are made come up to them. They go, hey, that was the planning board, or that was the zoning commission, or that was the task force, or that was the blue ribbon panel. That wasn't me.
I've never found that works. I can tell you that's never worked for me. If ever there was an attempt of me to subvert, it always, the buck stops with someone, and it should ultimately stop with the people who are elected and to represent a city.
That doesn't work with you because you're willing to come in here and sit down and answer my
take
questions.
The arrows. That's exactly right.
222 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We'll find out what else, if anything, Jack has on his mind regarding what could possibly get past the Tennessee Senate and past the General Assembly in what is expected to be the final week. We'll find out if this will, in fact, be the final week of the General Assembly coming up next on Super Talk. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So the General Assembly, I mean, the big issues, obviously, there were some big lift issues regarding, some of the aftermath of Covenant School, and that has to do with giving our teachers an opportunity to go through the training, to arm themselves, to be a last line of defense for students. We've covered that. Obviously, the Education Scholarship Fund was the biggie. There was another one that you made me aware of some weeks ago regarding franchise tax. Mm-hmm. Where are we on that? Has the Senate and House come together on it?
We're very close. The Senate has passed a bill. The House passed a different version of the bill, and we're in conference committee right now. On the Senate, the conference committee has been appointed. I'm not sure if it has on the House, but it will be. And just some mechanics and some details, but effectively, it's something we've been talking about for a while. We were encouraged by it being brought to our attention that based on a United States Supreme Court case from Maryland in 2016, that we might have a constitutional issue with the way we assess our franchise tax. So the governor brought forward a plan to say, hey, let's do two things. Let's fix that moving forward. That's almost a $400 million recurring tax break to businesses, mainly small businesses, small, medium size, a few larger businesses. About 100,000 businesses in Tennessee that are going to see a significant tax cut. We like cutting taxes in Tennessee. That's returning money back into the pockets of those business owners so they can hire more people, expand, do what they want to do.
Lower their prices. And then the governor also proposed that we do what is standard protocol in an instance where we think that an individual may have been overtaxed. They get a 3-year look back. It's a 3-year statute of limitations. Mm-hmm. So we're going to allow these companies to apply for, not only get the tax cut moving forward, but apply for a rebate, refund, if you will, for the last 3 years if they feel like they were overtaxed. I don't want to mischaracterize this, but as I am understanding it, it's the state of Tennessee looking at this and recognizing that they need to make sure that we're doing everything the proper way, that we're not overburdening our businesses in the state of Tennessee, and that we haven't been. Make it right moving forward, right, and do the right thing with regard to taxation on businesses, recognizing, as I do, that businesses don't pay taxes, that ultimately that tax rolls down to the consumer level.
That's exactly right. So we're in pretty solid agreement about that. We had an issue. There are a few companies out there that have received a tax credit based on this tax, and we want to make sure that they don't lose something that they were entitled to as well. The House would like to have some language in there that if you do apply for this refund, that you waive the right to sue us based on this Supreme Court case. Those are some reasonable things.
There were questions brought to my attention about the anonymity of the businesses involved. Why do you feel like do you support the idea of keeping their anonymity, or at least keeping their books closed with regard to the tax rebates?
I do, and here's why. Taxpayer information, proprietary taxpayer information, is long been something, be it at the federal level or certainly at the state level, is something that is very private. That's very confidential. When you pay your taxes to the state, you have to disclose all kinds of things that are proprietary to your business. And if that became public, it could put you at a competitive disadvantage against a competitor. And we owe it to the taxpayers of Tennessee, be it individuals or businesses, to make sure that their taxpayer information is kept privileged.
Jack, always a pleasure catching up with you. You're very succinct and very knowledgeable about everything going on in the Senate and the House, and we appreciate all of that. And this week is it, right?
Yeah, if all goes according to plan, hopefully Wednesday or Thursday we'll land the plane and we'll go back home to our jobs and our families and our districts, and we run a good state in Tennessee, and I'm glad the way we do it. I would not want to be up in Washington fighting those battles year round.
I mean, when I don't know about how you guys handle it, but when the General Assembly is not in session, I can keep my wallet in my back pocket. Well, I keep it in my front pocket when you guys are around town.
All we're trying to do is put more money in your wallet, Matt. I've told you that time. We're the least taxed state in the nation, so we're always looking for ways to give you your money back.
Look, I promise you this, in the 2.5 years that I've been here, filling out my income taxes, while it still bothers me on the federal level, it does not bother me in the least on the state level anymore.
Nothing. You're having to file for an income tax in Tennessee, and we're going to keep it that way.
Jack, thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
There's Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson, 232, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I want to say one more thing. You just heard me talking about U.S. Pest there. I want to say one more thing about U.S. Pest. And this goes to the heart of the type of company that J.K., Erica, and the rest of the crew over at U.S. Pest run. So I had a visit with, on Saturday morning, a gentleman by the name of Jesse stopped by my house. If you're watching on Super Talk TV, I'm going to show you what he gave me. This is what it was. I've had a number of people stop by my house. They don't have cards. They don't have literature. They're just, hey, we're roofers or whatever, and I just send them on the way. I rent in Mount Juliet, and so I'm not the decision maker with regard to the company that I utilize for my pest services. If I were, I would utilize U.S. Pest. And when I move in the next several months, obviously, I'm calling U.S. Pest first and foremost. But here's what I do know, and I encourage Jesse to contact my property management company because he knocked on my door. He was professional. He was courteous. We had a great conversation. He didn't know who I was from Adam's House Cat. He didn't know that I worked on Super Talk. He didn't know that I act as an endorser and a spokesperson for U.S. Pest. But he offered me good info. He talked to me about pest and creepy crawlies and the springtime and the trouble you get with mosquitoes. I mean, all of those conversations, and had a great literature. And I was just proud, based on that interaction, how professional Jesse was. And I wanted to shout him out personally because I think he did such a great job, because I know J.K. can occasionally catch the show, owner of the company. And I want J.K. and Erica to know how good, they already know this, but the good quality people that they're hiring at U.S. Pest and how professional they are. And it just made me proud to be associated with them. And I wanted to relate that to you. So go to uspest.com for all of your pest needs. uspest.com. 615-737-9986. Oh, I lost my caller. I was going straight to you there. I apologize that we lost you. We have incredible anti-Semitism rampant across the United States of America. I could play you, and I'm certain that you've heard, if you've been on social media at all, you've seen it, video after video after video of Jewish people attempting to walk on college campuses around the United States of America, unable to do so. There is a great and grave concern that this is a growing trend across our college campuses, and it has yet to be dealt with swiftly, directly, and harshly. Chaos has already engulfed the Ivy League. Protesters at Columbia University have spent days protesting against Israel's war with Hamas, a war started by, at least this part of it, Hamas. Lost in all of this is the reality that Hamas took it upon themselves last October to slaughter thousands. I don't have to debate the particulars with you, but right now we have pro-terrorist, pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist groups patrolling open spaces on college campuses, and no one's doing anything about it. Actively preventing, this is happening. If you've not paid attention to what's going down over the weekend, you had Columbia, and eventually the Columbia University president, Dr. Nemet Shafiq, closed the campus of Columbia off. It's in downtown New York City, and urged students not to travel to the campus in a statement posted just after 1 a.m. Monday. That's today. In the statement, the president said she was deeply saddened by actions of the agitators who have formed an encampment on campus. Not just that, they're forming these tent camps in public areas, and now they're doing so at Yale. I said they're doing so at Yale. Get it? You don't get it? Don't look at me that way. You know what I did.
You were pretending like it was spelled Y-E-L-L.
See. They don't call him the best producer in the business for nothing, folks. He knows what he's doing. It's now on the campus of Yale, and one wonders if this is soon to come to Vandy. I've been told that there are protests at Vandy. I've not corroborated that, but I've been told. This is not a matter of free speech. It is not a matter of free and open spaces. It is a matter of intentional harassment and intentional intimidation. of the Jewish students on these campuses that have every right to the same spaces that these encampments are taking up. To the point that when Jewish students try to walk in these open spaces, they are encircled by the mob. They are threatened and intimidated by the mob. They are told that they have to leave. Not that they need to leave, not that they should leave. They have to leave. And in a fit of ironic, I mean, I don't even know what you would call this. Words fail me. The same people that are threatening and intimidating the Jewish students because the Jewish students simply want to exist on campus, they're telling the Jewish students, when the Jewish students say, well, I mean, they're literally in some of the videos, and I would play them, but they're so loud and obnoxious and there's so much cursing, I can describe it a little better for you. These pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian, pro-terrorist encampment dwellers take up these public spaces, and several of the Jewish students come out and they go, hey, we just want to walk from here to there. We're just trying to walk campus. This is our campus too. And they say, no, you need to leave. Well, why should I leave? I paid my campus dues. I pay my money to go to this school. So one or two Jewish students are surrounded by 20 or 30 or 40 or in some cases more pro-terrorist students screaming at them about their Zionist ways in their occupation. And they tell them that the Jewish students have to leave because the Jewish students are scaring them. That's what they say. Well, you're making us feel uncomfortable, so you need to leave. Well, what the hell do you think you're making me feel? You're screaming from the river to the sea, Palestine, it will be free, meaning that you want to push all of the Jews into the Mediterranean Sea. Look it. You're in for a world of hurt if these college campuses do not shut this down. I understand the spirit of free speech. I understand that you need free speech areas. I understand that in a world, or rather I should say in a country that believes in the right of individuals to express themselves, everyone has the right to their own opinion, but you do not have the right to intimidate, harass, threaten, or otherwise terrorize Jewish students on that campus. And you certainly, sure as hell, don't have the right to create these encampments by which you take up these public spaces so as to prevent other college students from using them. It's not just the Jewish students. It's like me or you, Bell. We want to go out and we want to have a good time on the quad. We don't get to because of this encampment, and we're told unless we're in the pro-Palestinian sect, we have to leave. All across America, you're seeing this happen where the protesters shout these anti-Semitic chants, and I would dare say that most of these individuals would not know what the hell's going on in the Middle East if you put a gun to their head and demanded that they tell you. Sadly, these brilliant 17-year-old or 19-year-old or 20-year-old skulls of mush, they think they're so brilliant. I know I did. At my most brilliant, 20 years of age, knew everything about everything at that age. Well, sadly, nothing yet done about some of these encampments. You best get your big boy pants on and break them down and let the chip. And will it be nasty and rough? Yeah, because you've allowed this. You've allowed these entitled snot noses to act in this way for a certain amount of time, and their effort has been infused by pro-terrorist, pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas organizers that know how to use our own First Amendment against us. Time to push back. Real quick, Shelley is next up in Brentwood with a comment on the college protest. Hello, Shelley. How are you?
Hi there. I'm good, thank you. Well, I think that we ought to start taking names, and these kids that are wanting your college debt paid off, well, if your name's on the list, forget it, kid.
Well, it's one of the reasons that you won't see Joe Biden commenting on much of any of this because he needs those college students' votes, right? And it's one thing to pay them off, but God forbid he actually tell the truth about what they're supporting.
Of course, but I'll tell you, I got a little thing on Facebook from a friend, and it said, Well, why don't we just let them have 4 years of military service if they don't want to pay back their loan? I bet you they'd think about that a lot harder, wouldn't they?
Well, certainly, I would be all for it. Maybe not 4 years, but 2 years. Hey, you want to go into service to this United States of America through the United States military, or even, I don't know, Peace Corps or some other civilian corps type operation? If you're an anti-war lefty, okay, sure, 2 years of service, and we'll consider what that will pay off with regard to the student loans, and we will utilize the American government to pay off those businesses that let those loans.
Did you see where Ilhan Omar's daughter got suspended from Colombia for the protests?
I did.
And, of course, AOC came out and was just like, oh, this is a tragedy.
I think Ilhan Omar actually said she's never been as proud of her daughter as that moment where she got suspended.
Sounds about right.
That's on brand, certainly, for her. All right, Brian Wilson is always on brand, and we'll check in with him moments from now. Also, a Moon Pie Day update. Very excited. I need you to find out, because Belkay's already told me he's out. I need to know if Mac Morey and Chris Webber are in for our Wednesday Moon Pie experiment. I need to know if they're in. We'll find out next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Well. Now I've got a little frog in my throat.
Winding down our portion of the broadcast day and about to hand off to the one and only Brian Wilson. But I got a quick update before we get to Mr. Wilson and talk about what he's got going on the drive this afternoon, and to welcome him back from his shenanigans down at the beach. Moon pie update. Moon pie taste test happening this Wednesday. Belkay will refuse to participate. He's already done so. But I've got at least 4 participants on the big moon pie taste test this Wednesday. I've got all flavors of moon pie, all 8 flavors of moon pie. Brian Wilson, I got 8 flavors of moon pie that I got in the mail this weekend. And I'll send some out Watertown way if you're interested.
I tell you right now, it's hard to beat the original chocolate.
Tell you what, I've sampled one of each. And I have some of my favorites, and I'll save it till Wednesday. But there's blueberry, and there's zesty lemon, and there's mint, and there's banana, of course. And there's just, I'll save that till Wednesday. But man, oh man, the chocolate, I put it in the microwave for about 8 seconds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you don't need but just a touch.
Oh, so good. Speaking of good, how was your trip?
It was good. Thank you for filling in while I was gone. Cabana Wife, when we used to have a place down on the beach that we would go regularly, and we sold it. Basically, that made us able to buy this lovely house we have here in Watertown. But I had to promise Cabana Wife that I would still take her to the beach ever so often. So she called in that shit, and we took her down to the beach, and she came back, and I did too, quite relaxed, and thank you for filling in.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Well, you're relaxed and raring to go. I'm sad to report that some of the meet the new boss, same as the old boss, right? Donald Trump trial and overspending in Washington, D.C. A lot of these same issues. What do you have on the docket this afternoon?
Well, I think I'm going to start off in the top of the 3 o'clock hour with an examination of why it was we couldn't get student school choice across the goal line. And it irritates me immensely that a bill that had a tremendous amount of support in the state, despite some vocal opposition, could not get passed. And it's like, we're all on the same team here. Couldn't we have come to some kind of a conclusion to get this thing across the goal line? A perfect example, I think, of the perfect being the enemy of the good. And I'm going to get into that.
Well, I'm hopeful. We had Senator Jack Johnson on a little earlier, and I'm hopeful that they are going to kind of reset and refocus their efforts for next January. I don't think they're done trying to take a bite of the apple, but I, like you, Brian, am very disappointed that they weren't able to get this past the goal line. Yeah. Makes sense. Well, there he comes. Brian Wilson is on the way right after Mac Morey delivers some news from the Super Talk 99.7 WTN newsroom, and then the drive with the one and only Brian Wilson from 3 until 7 before we welcome in the great one, Mark Levin. We'll be back high noon tomorrow. Until then, friends, have a wonderful afternoon. Hug those loved ones. We'll talk to you tomorrow. So long, everybody.